Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're very happy to have you here. I guess we will wait like a minute for the rest to join. And on our part, we're all set to go. So let's wait like a minute. Thank you. Okay, so I guess we're ready to start, and so people will be joining as we proceed. So sound check, everybody hears me okay? So team, Konstantin, David. Okay, so let me introduce our today's presenters today. My name is Marika Zlova, and I'm head of marketing at ApprovalMax, and I'm very happy to be your host today. We also have Konstantin Breduk. Konstantin is director of product at ApprovalMax, and he will be helping us with the Q&A session. So hello, Konstantin.
Yes, hello, everyone.
And we also have David Wieseneck as our speaker, and David is VP Finance at letgo. So David is joining us from New York. David, hello.
Hey, everybody. Good morning.
Okay, so moving on. Yeah, so today we will be talking about a success story, finance success story of a multi-entity USA-based mobile classifieds advertising company letgo, and the business case that they had for introduction of the tighter financial controls for their multiple entities. So as I mentioned, David will be our co-speaker. David started his career in audit at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and where he grew the finance and accounting function for the organization. And in 2015, David joined letgo, a mobile advertising classifieds company, and as the jack of all trades finance professional, David built the finance and accounting function from scratch there. So David, my first question to you, so what is it that letgo does as a company, and how does it operate as a multi-entity organization?
Yeah, of course. So letgo, similar to my previous company, OLX, is a classified advertising platform. We are mobile-based. We have a website as well. But 99% of our users use our app through their mobile phone to buy and sell secondhand goods with other people in their community or in their city. So our main focus is here in the U.S. We are in all 50 states, users all across the country. We're also available in a few other countries. Our secondary market, where we really have a lot of usage and users, is also in Turkey. And so we, as a kind of global company from the beginning for our application, but also as a business, we have subsidiaries in the US, the Netherlands, Spain, and Turkey. And so because we have multiple subsidiaries, we need to be able to have multiple sets of books, financial records. And while we have multiple sets of books, we operate as one company. So we want to make sure we have consistent controls, consistent processes, so that my end users, which are my employees, don't kind of see the visibility of those subsidiaries and just see us as one cohesive team. Speaking about team, when I joined in 2015, we had just started. We were about 5 or 10. Again, I started in, I think it was April 2015. The company had just incorporated a month or two before. And now we're in 2019. We have 270 people across those 4 subsidiaries, 4 offices.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for that. So you mentioned you joined letgo in 2015. So what were the objectives then for finance and accounting?
Yeah, so I think the objectives when I first started were to open up a bank account and talk to investors to get some initial capital for our business. Like I said, when we first started, it was really just the co-founders, our CTO, a handful of other people. We had just started out. We're developing our application. And so really then it was very much kind of just getting the business started, starting up our first set of financial books. So keeping the books clean from the beginning, making sure we didn't have to play catch up. But really it was just opening up a bank account and talking to investors to get money. That's obviously changed over the last 4 years, but a lot of things have stayed the same.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure, makes perfect sense. So at an early stage, definitely, so what were the challenges? Basically, what were the challenges with vendor bill approval, and what systems were you using?
Yeah, so coming from, again, we had just started the company. We didn't really have anything in place. After I opened the bank account, I started thinking about, and I was the only person doing finance. We were very small. We didn't have a team. Now we have a finance team that works with me. But basically, we wanted to take a look at there. I didn't have much of a budget for financial systems, so I looked to things like QuickBooks and Xero. I really liked Xero because it was more of a global platform than QuickBooks was at the time. I really liked Xero's cloud-first mentality, and also just reading about Xero, I had seen a lot of growth 4 years ago, and I've seen a continued amount of growth. So I thought Xero was a great application to kick off and be our core GL. And what I added onto that was Expensify for expense management, because I knew we were going to be traveling. So I wanted to make sure that my team, my employees, had a good expense management tool. So we launched with Expensify. They have an integration between the two. And that was kind of really the start to our process. In terms of vendor bill management, from the beginning, we had bills to pay, rent, advertising, office expense, and things like that. And so in the beginning, we just used Xero's approval tools that were kind of built into the Xero application. They were very rudimentary, but when we were only 10 or 20 people, it was fine. I would just send an email to someone, they would approve it in the system, and it was fine for when we were 10, 20 people. But as we started to grow, obviously the need for a different process started to show itself.
Okay, sure, makes perfect sense. So I guess we have our next slide talk about that. Let me make the switch.
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
So what were my challenges when it came to the vendor bill approval process? So the first thing I did was just went on to the Xero community. They have a really good forums. And so I just looked to see if anybody had solved this problem already. My problems were that the built-in approval process was not that great. You could only have one level of approval. It was either approved or not approved. You couldn't reject. You couldn't have multi-levels of approvals. You couldn't have any rules like if it's this amount, then have this person approve it. If it's this department, have this person approve it. So it was just like rudimentary. And so I looked on the community forum and I just asked other people. I said, hey, has anybody solved this problem? Is there anything out there? There were some tools out there like Bill.com that had something. Obviously, I had come from NetSuite and Coupa previously at my previous company. Those tools were obviously much more expensive and not really fit for a growing company like us. So I was kind of surprised to see nothing out in the market. And really when we got into that range of like 20 to 40 people in the team, the emailing back and forth to the various managers, for like 30, 40 bills per month just became very time consuming. It was a lot of time for me, basically putting in, again, I was by myself, no finance team help. It was just me. So what I would do is I'd put the PDF into the system, code it. I would send an email to a manager and say, hey, log into Xero, click the approve button, and if you have any problems, let me know. And I would have to do that for every single bill, and if they forgot or if they needed a reminder, I would just have to find that email, remind them, blah, blah, blah. And it got to the point where, it just wasn't really working very well. So the other big reason is that I didn't want to give, 20 people access to Xero. It's my accounting system. If they click the wrong button, if they code it differently, if they go look at someone's payroll, that's kind of a segregation of duties issue. So I really didn't want to give everybody in my company access to Xero just so I could do vendor bill approvals. It was just not the right way of doing it. And as you can see from this graph, it doesn't look that horrible, but that middle part of sending emails, manually reminding people, took a lot of time out of my day, and time that I really wanted to spend working on, other high value things for the team.
Sure. Yeah, thank you very much for the detailed overview. So the next question then will be, so given the specifics of your business, what were the particular requirements to the approval software that you had at the time?
Yeah, so one of the big requirements is that it had to work with all of my my Xero subsidiaries, and it had to work seamlessly integrated with Xero. I really didn't want to do manual uploads and downloads. I really didn't want to do kind of a hack together or stuck together with tape type of integration. It had to be a seamless integration. The other thing is I knew we were growing, so it needed to be multi-tiered, so that if if it's over a certain amount, it would go to maybe the CEO for approval. We could go from a first manager to a second manager. It had to have different roles for myself to be an admin, the approvers to be approvers, things like that. And it had to be able to work with different currencies. So like I said, we are in Turkey, we're in Spain, we're in the Netherlands and the US, and those are 3 different currencies. So I need to make sure that it would work with multi-currencies, not just the base currency as in the Xero currency, but also, we might have a US dollar, bill in a Euro subsidiary, or a British pound bill in our US subsidiary. So I need to make sure that it was working with different currencies and was smart about it. The other thing that I really wanted not for myself, but really for the managers, the approvers, was the ability for email notifications, the ability for them, because they're traveling a lot, to either decide where they want to approve. If they want to approve in their email, they can approve in their email. If they want to approve in the mobile app, approve in the mobile app. If they want to log into the website, because maybe they have 10 to approve, they can do that at the end of the week and approve it all on the website in one go. And so that was super important. And the ability to just reject a bill or to have a conversation within the approval software, right? Hey, what is this for? I thought I approved this already. Who purchased this? Why is it coming to me? There's obviously a lot of questions about why things come to an approver, and sometimes they just want to ask, and we can have that conversation within the tool. And Xero was lacking that, and so that's why we looked for something else.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for your answer. And obviously, so with time and with some research, since that was 3 years ago, so you found ApprovalMax, and so you onboarded, and so what were the key functions, really the key functions that you implemented of ApprovalMax at first? Yeah,
so before I go into that, I just want to focus, there is a quote here at the bottom that's really important to me. It comes down to really my theory about using systems and using tools, which is, if obviously the managers or the people, they're my customers, right? I have to focus on my team and deliver for my team. And if the tool is not simple to use, what I found is that they won't use it. Our team have lots of time. They want to focus on their job. Their job is not necessarily, it is part of their job, but it's a small part of their job to approve bills. And what I found is if it's not super easy for them to do their job or do this piece of their job, they just won't use it. They're going to find the easiest way to go around it. So what I wanted to do is make sure I found a tool that catered to my managers that was super easy for them to use, so they could go in, do the thing they needed to do as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. So moving on with the next question. So ApprovalMax is on, and the key functionality that you found useful. Not going deep into the actual capabilities and features, but at a high level. So what was that?
Yeah. So for me, finding ApprovalMax and seeing the integration with Xero was key. I knew I could have one system, one unified set of financial controls for all of the different entities. And it could really run the gamut from, more expensive marketing expenses to everyday facilities and office expenses. And I could put it all in and have all of my managers be in the system to approve. We could have rules set in place. So if it's this account code or this department, it goes to this manager. If it's over this amount, it could go to, maybe a second level for approval. So different authority levels. And basically based on those criteria that we set out in the matrix, the approval matrix, it would go to those different managers for approval, depending on that criteria. And all of that data, all of that criteria is automated through the Xero integration. And so instead of me having to figure out what manager needs to approve this bill, I can just code it into the approval matrix, which takes 5-10 minutes to do. And then everything's automated. And what we really can focus on now is exception handling. So what does that mean? Only when something does not fit within the predetermined criteria, the control that we put in place, that's where we can focus our time and say, okay, is this a new vendor? Is this a new type of spend? Let's work on this exception and figure out where it needs to fit. And then we can code it in for the next time. And so I think all of those things really sold me on the automated piece of it, which is something that I'm trying to do more and more with my team, is automate so that we can focus on exception handling and focus on higher value that we can give back to the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. As the next slide, we actually have a graphics of the process after the approval software was introduced. So if you could comment on the process and just at a high level.
Yeah, so the process now is that we get an invoice. Almost all of our invoices are already PDF emailed to finance@letgo.com. We use the email to bill functionality within Xero, where we can send that to a specific email. It gets into our Xero, it captures it, does a little bit of OCR, a little bit of machine learning that Xero is playing around with, but we're also investigating maybe other data capture tools to be in this process. And it goes into an awaiting approval stage. Now, Approval Max picks that up automatically when it's in the awaiting approval stage. It routes it for approval to various different managers, depending on the criteria that we set up. And so the managers then just come in and they see a full list. Doesn't matter what subsidiary it is, it will say which subsidiary, but they just have one inbox where they can view their approvals. Once it gets approved in Approval Max then pings Xero with the API to move it to awaiting payment, which is now, it means it hit the GL. And now my accounts payable team, they can see what's in awaiting payment and then schedule that for payment, whether it be in a weekly or a bi-weekly process, or maybe there's a payment that they want to hold off on for cash flow reasons, maybe a little bit longer. They can schedule that out in Xero. And then of course we go and we pay that through the bank or a different bank payment system.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. Makes perfect sense. By the way, I would like to mention it to our audience, and we skipped it at the beginning. So we would like to encourage you to ask questions anytime. So please wait till the Q&A session. We can answer them as we go. And to ask a question, please use the Q&A box at the bottom menu in Zoom. And surely, please don't hesitate to then ask questions as we finalize the story. So David, back to you. Further on the scope, on the processes and the scope of the approval automation solution, what are the approval workflows that you are using for, and what kind of expenses are tracking and processing with that?
Yeah, so the main approval workflows that we use it for are vendor bill approval. And also we're using it for sales invoice approval now as well, because we're expanding on that. I actually didn't tell you guys, but we are using it now in multiple subsidiaries, which is fantastic. The main one we use it for is bill approval though. So we use it for everything from marketing costs to IT costs, Amazon Web Services, things like that, office expenses, HR costs like recruiter invoices, contractors, really anything. Every single bill goes through Approval Max, goes through Xero, then Approval Max for approval. I'm trying to think, payroll we do not do through Approval Max because that is kind of on a different process. Expense reports skip approval max because it's already approved in our expense report system. But everything else really goes through approval max, and we make sure that the approval max matrix is set up so that the different types go to different managers depending on who owns that part of the budget. We're also experimenting with the purchase order creation and approval for office supplies. I think someone on my team, I believe Jess is on here, who's leading up that project. She's listening today. So we're implementing that for office supplies. We are also adding in IT equipment like laptops, monitors, keyboards and stuff like that. So anything that the IT team needs for the office. And we're adding that through purchase order creation and approval. And then of course the bill gets matched with it later on in the process when we receive the bill. So now we have a full kind of purchase to pay process for that spend. And then we use it for compliance and audit. So when the auditors come, whether they be internal, external, statutory auditors, we can show them the control framework that we've implemented, and they can rely upon that. And then of course we do reports. So at the end of the month, we need to do accrual reports. We can pull a report of anything that has not yet been approved and use that to make accruals at the month end, so we can close the books quickly. And then sometimes we want to do cross-entity reports. So we'll pull reports that for across all of the entities to give us information about, things like speed of approval. Maybe we want to see, is there someone who's much slower at approving than other people? We can give them feedback and help them through the process. Maybe there's a feature that they don't know about that can help speed it up. So we use that as well. And so these are kind of all the features that we use that we think are pretty great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So further on the reports, actually, so as a VP of Finance of a multi-entity organization, you surely have a case of working with multiple Xero files. So how does it work with Approval Max for you? So could you comment on that?
Yeah, so what we did is we set up all of our Xero files first. So we have 5 Xero files. And then I'm the admin of all of those Xero files. I'm also the admin of Approval Max. So what I did is created a new entity within Approval Max. I did it a while ago, so I can't remember. Constantine might be able to help me. But you create a new entity in Approval Max, and then you press the Connect to Xero button. And when it does that, it'll ask you which Xero file you want to connect. So I scroll down and make sure I click, if it's the Spanish entity, I click the Spanish entity in Xero, and then it's connected. And then from there, you set up the approval matrix for that entity, and then you replicate for the other entities. And in total, it maybe takes 20 minutes to set up 5 entities. So if you're only doing one, it'll take you 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops. If you're sending them multiple, it'll just take you like 5 or 10 for each. It's quite simple. And again, since Xero has one login, Approval Max has one login, that's fantastic for me as the admin, but also really fantastic for my end users, the managers. They don't need to remember multiple logins for Approval Max. They can just log in with one. They get one single inbox of all of their approval requests, all of their notifications. The summary email that they get is unified. So all of the Approval Max approvals, regardless of subsidiary, comes to them in their email. And then we're able to run custom reports by reaching out to the support team to make sure we get that multi-entity consolidated view of any reports that we need.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, thanks again for the answer. So, and moving on, it's been almost 3 years since implementing automated and centralized financial control. So could you please talk about the benefits, the immediate benefits for you, for your team, and for your organization?
Yeah, in terms of internal controls?
The benefits that the automation brought to you.
So there's kind of the obviously benefits, which are time-based, right? Like I cut down on the amount of hours that I spend on emailing managers and following up with them because the automation really allows us to do that. So that's a huge time benefit. I think I went from like 4 or 5 hours per month down to like 10 minutes per month that I spend on managing the approval process and kind of the time I need to do this. So, which is really great. There's also the benefits of the speed of which the approvals happen. In the past, it would take, 20, 30 days to get a bill approved just because managers were like, forget it's there. They don't want to log into the system, whatever. With ApprovalMax, because it's so easy, what we found is that the average time is really fast. I think the average time now is like 24 hours or maybe 48 hours for an approval, as opposed to before it was anywhere between 2 weeks to 3 weeks. So the time benefit for us, obviously, the faster we can get our bills approved, the more data and the more we can control our cash flow, because it's there, we know it, and we can time it out. If it's not approved, we don't know if we should be accruing for it. We don't know if this is a real invoice or if someone's blowing smoke. So we can really control our cash flow. And so now we get very little complaints from our vendors about, late payment because everything's been approved. It used to be we would get some emails from people and say, hey, your invoice is 45 days late. Where is it? And we say, it's still going through the approval process. Now we don't get those anymore. And I don't have to chase people. In terms of internal controls, having a control framework has been fantastic for our relationship with our auditors. They really can come and take a look and understand that these are not just one-offs, but this is documented proof of and auditable of our process. And our auditors really like that. In the past, they would say, well, how do you know that manager was supposed to approve that? And I would say, well, I don't know. I'm the VP of finance. I know everything. Now I can say, listen, I have an approval matrix. We set it up. We change it every so often, depending on the business that needs and kind of things like that. But we set it up. And so the approval process follows this approval matrix. It's a predefined set of criteria. And the auditors really appreciate that.
Right. So that's really very much impressive results and very impressive statistics that you mentioned. And I guess it's very helpful and very much insightful to our audience. So final question on my part then, after you've done a couple of trials and a couple of experiments and have gone through a couple of implementations for several entities, what are your takeaways and what is your advice for those who are moving from paper-based approvals to fully digital process? So piece of advice for our audience.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that I think about is don't just take, the paper-based process and move it online. Think about what you want. Technology is going to allow you to do more things. So think about what process you have before. That's good. Is that the exact process you want? Take this as an opportunity to upgrade your process. Obviously, utilize the best technology that you can. Utilize, automation, machine learning, OCR as much as you can, and then of course APIs to make the data flow from one system to the next. So utilize the best technology. Think about your future process. So think about, what's the process I have now? Where do we want to go? Do I just want to copy over the paper process, or can I think a little bit further down the line about what process we can have? Start to think about that and think about your system scaling. Obviously, you don't want to build too many approvals in the system. You can always change later, but think about making sure that the system that you pick can scale with you over the next couple of years. I would also think about, just starting smaller than an all-in, full approach. Think about taking one or two departments or one or two processes first, test it out, get some buy-in from your users, and then roll it out further to more and more until you capture the entire process. One of the things that I've often find is that you go too fast into the system, you make some mistakes, you don't learn from them. That can be disastrous sometimes. So think about, starting, playing around with it, seeing if you like it, and then going further in once you have that buy-in. And then every so often, review your controls. So financial controls get stale after a while. Why? People move departments. managers have different roles. Some people leave the team. You have new people that you hire. So every so often, we do this probably every like 2 months, or unless there's a bigger event, that we'll take a look at all of our approval matrix, see if there's anything that needs to be amended, see if there's anything that needs to change with the growth of our company, make sure that the criteria, the thresholds still make sense for our type of business. Maybe they're too low, maybe they're too high, and we'll amend them as the company grows to what makes sense. And the cool thing about, Approval Max and other tools that we use is that they're very flexible. It doesn't require, a full-on system administrator, that knows SQL and blah, 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 to make these changes. These are all, very easy changes that anybody can make, obviously with the right permissions. But I mean, anybody that is, in our position can make. I'm not a technologically savvy, person that knows how to code. I don't need to. I can come in, make some changes, if-then statements, very easy, and move on with my day. And so I really like that. And so that's my key takeaway.
Yeah, that's also very, very helpful. And thank you very much for the extremely insightful walkthrough and the best practices that you shared. And I guess we can move on to the questions. We have a couple of questions, and it's time for me to hand it over to Konstantin, actually. So just a second. Konstantin, please take over.
Thanks a lot, Maria. And we have received lots of questions, actually. And let's go through some of them. And as for remaining questions, I think we will just do some follow-ups. So let me start with the following one. So the question that we received is, please discuss the audit trail created in Approval Max. So there is, that is quite an important feature that Approval Max provides.
So, sorry, sorry to interrupt. I guess it's the kind of two questions. Yeah. One thing is a generic one, how it works in Approval Max, and then I guess it's more, also very valuable to hear how it works for David.
Yeah.
So
let's cover both actually. So on a high level, Approval Max creates an audit trail for each bill and each purchase order that is going through an approval flow in Approval Max. And as a result, you basically see who has authorized each particular bill. And that is also useful that this report, audit trail, it is synced to Xero. And you can actually see in Xero itself, not going into Approval Max, who has approved this particular bill. And when it comes to the audit process, then you have all this information right in Xero, right? And David, if you could comment, maybe if you're using this audit trail function, how helpful it is, that would be useful.
Yeah, of course. So just to clarify, when it comes to the approval matrix, we find it super easy to use. Basically, any type of if-then statement that we can think of, we can create that in the approval matrix. So what we set up is really going off of our accounts in the system. So if it is these type of accounts, then this manager is the first manager to be the approver. It's usually the budget manager of that department. We also have sometimes specific vendors. So if it's this vendor, then it's this manager, because maybe that vendor is owned or managed by a specific person in our company. Then we have a second approval stage, which is our CEO. Anything over $25,000 or 25,000 euros will then go to our CEO for a second approval, because he wants to be involved in anything that's kind of over a certain amount. And then we do a final finance approval. And so that comes to me just to make sure that the team has coded it correctly, and that we have the correct amount of approvals. Once I do that final approval, it gets synced back to Xero to be paid. And so we review those. We review that matrix once a month. And like I said, it takes us probably maybe 10 minutes per month to really take a look, make some changes, and move on with our lives. But just one more thing. Literally any type of if-then statement that you can think of, the Approval Max matrix can really handle, including if this does not equal this, if this is equal or greater than this, or equal or lesser than this, you can really build that out in Approval Max. It's quite flexible.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you. Konstantin?
Yeah, then we do have a number of questions related to the security of the application, penetration testing, and these are all very good questions. So let me provide some high-level information, and then, yeah, as I mentioned, let's better do a follow-up, and we'll share some additional things. So first of all, we are GDPR compliant. That was a very important exercise for us that we went through. And you're going to see a GDPR compliance statement on our website alongside with terms and conditions and privacy policy. So it is all available. Then if there is a need to sign a DPA, we're very open for that. Just contact us and we'll be happy to sign a DPA. And yes, we have went through a penetration testing. We're doing it yearly, actually. And yeah, we have an executive summary of this penetration testing results to share with you. So, well, we do care about security a lot, obviously, since we're dealing with financial data. That is actually one of our top priorities, to make sure that data is secure. And the last thing, we are using Microsoft as a provider of all our infrastructure things, and we're hosting our application in Ireland with a backup in Netherlands. So these are answers to most basic questions about security. We have lots of details to share, but yeah, let's do it as a kind of a private follow-up.
Thank you. Sure. I guess we mentioned actually the names of the people who questions we have answered already.
Yeah, we have answered questions from Mark. Yeah, let's and Mark, yeah, we will make a follow-up with you. Another question is, what are the different user profiles, different basically levels of access in Approval Max? So yeah, let's do the same way. I'll comment on the product itself, and then David, you're very welcome to comment on how these features are used. So we do have a number of ways to limit access of different people to different parts of the system. And well, first of all, it is on the organizational level. So in this case that we have discussed, David actually has a number of organizations in Approval Max, a number of related Xero files, and you can actually add a particular user within Approval Max to say organization number 1, but not add this person to the organization number 2. That is the first very basic level of access. The second level is that in each organization, you have different roles for all the people that you add. And by default, people get this basic role of a user. And this means that they will be able to approve a bill once they have it assigned to them, but they will not be able to see any other bills. So it works the way that if I'm an approver of marketing expenses, I will see marketing expenses, but I will not see expenses made by, say, our sales team or engineering team, something like that. So this is another level of security. And then, of course, within Approval Matrix itself, you define all these rules that would route bills and purchase orders to different people, defining in the essence who should be able to see what and who should be able to authorize what. And then actually users can get additional level of access, and you can assign a person to be an auditor. This means that they will see everything in the system, but they will not be able to change this. So they will be able to see all the bills, they will not be able to approve them. And finally, we have the most advanced level, that is the level of administrator, who is able to set up workflows, to force decisions, handle some type of other exceptions. And well, obviously you shouldn't have all those people that you add to Approval Max as administrators. They should be mostly users, and maybe 2 or 3, depending on the organization, should be auditors, maybe administrators. So yeah, Approval Max is quite flexible in the sense. So yeah, David, if you have something to add in regards to security, you're very welcome.
Yeah, we find it to be super easy, and we really like all of the different roles. We utilize all of them. So most of our team are managers, they're just approvers. We have our finance team, which are either admins or auditors, so that you can see everything. But if you're an auditor, you can't change anything. It's just kind of being there so you can pull information or see, get visibility into the process. And then we have some that are requesters for the purchase order process. Those requesters really are just there to make a request for a new purchase order, and then the approver will approve it. So we utilize all of it, and we find it to be super easy, and we find the security to be fantastic. We haven't had any issues yet, so let's knock on some wood. And we really appreciate the things like SOC 2 testing and fin testing and stuff like that. So looking forward to more of that.
Thank you. Sure.
Yeah, well, actually, we are starting to run out of questions. So let me ask if there are any other questions that you would like to clarify about Approval Max. Actually, with the previous answer about security, I have covered like 4 questions at once. So yeah, if there are any additional questions that you would like to clarify, you're very welcome to use this Q&A button.
There's a question here from Vusi. His question is, can purchase requisitions, not purchase orders, be done in Approval Max? And the answer is actually yes. So my understanding is that purchase requisition is the request, and a purchase order is basically an approved purchase requisition. So so once it becomes approved, it then becomes a purchase order. And so you can create that workflow depending on how you want to do it and depending on your system to do that process, and either create the purchase order in Approval Max or in Xero. So it's quite flexible and quite cool.
Yeah. Okay, there is another question about visibility, about the delegation feature while approvers are on holidays. Well, this is a good one. So yeah, that is happening from time to time, that someone is going on vacation and becoming not available. And well, on the one hand, you want to keep the process moving, right? You don't want to just stop bill approval and saying, well, since someone is not on a vacation, we're not going to approve this bill. Well, that is not the best idea. On the other hand, changing the whole workflow each time someone goes on vacation, it could be also a little bit time consuming. So the feature that we have that we call delegates allows to set a delegate for a particular person who is going on vacation. And this delegate that you set will be authorizing all the documents, bills, purchase orders, sales invoices on behalf of the original approver while the original approver is on vacation. While when original approver returns back, you just make a switch. All the bills are reassigned, all those not yet approved bills are reassigned back to the original approver. And yeah, that's how it works. It is quite a popular feature, actually, because it allows to handle this basic scenario of people going on vacations.
Yeah, we use this all the time. Also, one of the things we've noticed is a lot of people go on vacation, or even if they're on sick leave, they might not have time to set the delegation before they go on sick leave. So sometimes I'll get a message from them on vacation or on sick leave and just saying, hey, listen, I'm out, I can't access Approval Max. Can you do it for me? And I can set up as the admin the delegation for them while they're out. So make sure that they can focus on their vacation or on getting better. And obviously we can keep the process moving forward with someone on their team or a different manager that has the budget authority to approve their expenses.
Yeah, thank you very much for answering. I believe we have a couple minutes left for a couple of other questions. And unless Konstantin corrects me, I guess there is a very good question regarding Expensify and approving expenses, employee expenses in Expensify and how it works with Approval Max. And I guess, David, this is a question for you.
Yeah, so basically we set up the process so that if it's approved in Expensify, it does not need to get approved by Approval Max. And so we skip that process for anything that's in Expensify. That's a setup. There's different ways you can set that up. Either you can set it up with the Expensify integration by just going directly to the approved status. So there's nothing you need to do on Approval Max, or you can set up a rule in Approval Max that basically automatically approves it in Approval Max if you want. So there are a few different ways you can set it up, but we skip that process because basically a manager has already approved the Expensify expense. We don't need to approve it again in Approval Max.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much. So Konstantin, you had a comment or?
Well, actually, we have a very, very nice question. Actually, we have a couple of questions asked by Ted. So yeah, let me mention it. At what number of employees did a ProMax become essential and started saving a lot of time? So that's a question to David.
Yeah, I think it was around 40 people. That's when we started really seeing that our email, it wasn't paper-based, really. We didn't really have paper. It was really just email-based, that it became something we couldn't handle. We had about 30 bills per month. Emails were going back and forth. It was quite confusing. I couldn't really keep control of it. And it just wasn't something that I wanted to spend my time on. And so I think it was about 40 people, or maybe 30 emails per month, 30 invoices per month that it got out of hand, and I really wanted something. And so the price per value of Approval Max was well worth the time that I was saving with Approval Max.
Yeah, David, correct me if I'm wrong. I guess it's rather a ratio of the number of employees and the number of bills that you have. So it can be a big number of employees, but a low number of bills, and you're fine. So it's kind of.
I think it really depends on your company, but I think it's not so much. I can tell you about my experience, but it's more about how much time are you spending on this. If you're spending more than, like, let's say 30 minutes per week on sending out emails for approvals, that's when you say we should automate this, and maybe even earlier, because there's no reason to spend time doing low value work when you can just set it and let the automation do the work.
That's a great comment. Sure. Time, yeah, and you're saying like half an hour a week. That's all.
Yeah.
That's starting to be a business case to look at.
Yeah, that's your time. That's your money that you're spending on this.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Konstantin.
Well, yeah, I think we have covered all the questions. At least it looks so.
I can see one more if we have like 2 minutes, I guess. Sure. The question seems to be quite interesting, and it's back to reference to the pre-accounting software. So David, you mentioned that you were using Xero. So are you planning to use pre-accounting software like Receiptbank or Data Molina or something? And I guess it's a question for Konstantin, like a very quick one, in terms of how it works with Approval Max.
Yeah, so just to step in there are a handful of data capture OCR tools that we can integrate with Xero and use as our full stack or end-to-end process. We're investigating some of them. We haven't really moved forward. Xero itself has some data capture and has some machine learning. And so we're trying to weigh the pros and cons of adding another tool to the system versus can Xero really step up their game and provide that functionality within the tool themselves. So we're investigating it. It's definitely a project that we want to pick up on, but we haven't fully invested the time to do it quite yet.
Thank you. Sure. Anything you would like to add, Konstantin?
Well, I would comment also to the previous question. Actually, we have done a research with our clients and trying to figure out what are these use cases when Approval Max becomes critical. And well, the results are quite interesting for us. We see that there is a number of use cases. So it's not just about the number of employees. It's not just about the number of requests. And it could be sometimes a compliance thing. So there are certain organizations that just need to be compliant with some external regulations, and they start implementing Approval Max because it saves a lot of time in preparations for external audits, and that's a business case for them. Some organizations, they are processing actually lots of requests. They don't have too many approvers, but just hundreds of invoices, and then this makes a business case for them. Other organizations, they have not so many bills, but they have lots of approvers, and that's why it starts to becoming hard to coordinate these approval decisions. Sometimes it's about distributed teams. So it could be just 5 approvers across the globe, but they are in completely different time zones. And just because of these completely different time zones, it becomes hard to coordinate them. So yeah, a number of use cases we have for Approval Max in this sense.
Thank you very much, Konstantin. Yeah, that's a very valuable addition. And we're pretty much running out of time. I guess just one final question, and but that's a big one. So I guess, David, it's back to you. So are you using any payment automation? And if you could comment on that.
So we are not using payment automation. Again, it's another thing that we're taking a look at. So we really focused on the core, and now we're working on kind of the ends, the data capture in the front and the payment automation. We're starting to look at some of the new payment tools. We've looked at Bill.com, but because we're an international company, Bill.com is not 100% suited for us because it's very much focused on the US or North American market, but we are investigating that. We're investigating TransferWise, and obviously we're looking at what kind of automation we can do with our bank, but banks are a little bit slower than some of the fintech companies that we've seen. So we are investigating. We're always looking to automate the process, but we haven't found the silver bullet quite yet.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I guess we're winding up. Konstantin, we're all set with the questions, right?
Well, there is one more tiny last question, so let's answer it. Yeah, so the question is, what other products ProMax integrates with, right, other than Xero? So we have integrations with Xero and QuickBooks Online. So we basically have two products for the Xero ecosystem and for QuickBooks Online ecosystem. These products are different in terms of scope that we cover. Integration with Xero is more advanced than integration with QuickBooks Online. Although there are some plans to change this, right? So let it be like an intriguing part of the webinar. Some good things will be happening in this direction.
Yeah, I guess we will definitely follow up on most of the questions, and we'll be very happy to provide additional information on everything that has been asked. So sure, if there is interest in that, sure, happy to provide collateral on that. Okay, so Konstantin, this time all set, winding up?
Yep.
Sure. So David, thank you so very much for joining us this beautiful New York morning on our time, and I guess it was a fantastic evening the UK time. Thanks again, and it's been very valuable, and we're very happy to have you as our customer and as our partner. And thank you very much to the audience that have joined us today. Again, for any questions, we will be very happy to get back in touch with you and follow up on the questions and information requests, as Konstantin mentioned. So thank you very much, and talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah, bye.